Alright, fellow survivors, this is Programmer Z here, bringing you another installment of the Walking Code C++ programming series. This is going to be lesson 15, and in this lesson we're going to talk about a new data type that we have available to us, and that data type is called a string data type. We're going to learn about what arrays are, how to create arrays, and how to fill arrays. Alright, and then we're going to finish up this by adding an array to our program to hold our equipment. Now, arrays are kind of tricky for a lot of people. A lot of people are confused by arrays at first. Really, an array is just a variable. It's a variable with a kick, if you want to look at it that way. So, but first of all, we're going to talk about strings. A string is nothing more than just a string of characters. Adam, my first name, is a string. Right? You'll notice that around the strings we have these quotation marks. Right? That's because all of our strings have to be enclosed in quotation marks. To use strings in our program, we have to include the header file string. And strings are objects. Don't let that throw you. We're not ready to talk about objects yet. In the next lecture video, we're going to get a 15,000-foot overview of what an object is and how it applies to strings and strings only and stuff like that. You mentioned object-oriented programming, and a lot of beginning programmers break out into a sweat. Okay, because objects are all this big, high technical stuff. It's really not. But we're going to save actual object-oriented programming for a future lesson. I want you guys to get the basics down solid before we move on to object-oriented programming. If anybody's taking a calculus course before, first of all, God bless you. Second of all, if you're really good at algebra, you will do good at calculus. Alright, it's just because you have the basics of algebra down, and all calculus is algebra with a twist. Alright? So, we're not ready to talk about objects yet. Just take a few things on faith. We're not going to do a whole lot with strings in the lab for this lesson, so I don't want anybody to worry about object-oriented programming. Alright? Next thing we're going to talk about is an array, because we really want to focus in on arrays in this lesson here. The only reason I included strings in this lesson is so we'd have something to put in an array besides numbers. Alright, or characters, or Boolean values, or whatever. Alright, I wanted to do a real interesting array. An array is a continuous list of memory addresses used to store data of the same type. Now, if we go back to basic variables, we know that a variable is nothing more than a memory address that we're using to store information. Alright? An array is just a list of memory addresses. Alright? It has to be a contiguous list, or excuse me, a contiguous memory space, meaning it can't be fragmented all over the place in memory. It has to be continuous or contiguous, as some programmers say. The thing about arrays is items in your array are identified by a subscript. If you've ever done something like a to-do list, these are the things I have to do today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, item 1 might be go to the store and get bread. The second item on your list might be go to the bank and deposit $1 million. We'd all like that one, wouldn't we? But items in your array are identified by a subscript. Now, here, this last thing on this slide is the most important thing with arrays, because programmers have screwed this up since the beginning of time. The subscript starts at 0 and increases by 1 for every item in your array. Okay, the subscript starts at 0 and increases by 1. Here is an example. Alright, we're going to have an array of fruit. Okay? My subscript, let me get a pointer options. Here we go. My subscript, which is right here, starts at 0 and it increases by 1 for every item in my array up to item 4. And my value is apples. I guess I could have put the quotes in there too, because these are strings after all. Alright, so on and so forth. Anyway, apples, oranges, grapes, cherries, plums. I didn't put kiwi fruit or anything weird in there. Now, how many elements are in this array? Meaning, how many items are in my list? There are 5 elements in my array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the subscript of the array starts at 0 and it goes to 4. This is a very important distinction to make. Again, I'm going to hammer this during the lecture and during the lab of this lesson, because if I repeat it a million times, somebody will still get it wrong, somebody will get a compiler, somebody will contact me, what's wrong with my code, and then we got to go through this again. Alright, 1,000,001 times. Your subscript starts at 0 and goes to 1 minus the number of the number of elements minus 1 of your array. 0 through 4. The number of elements in your array is just that, the number of elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright? So we're going to see a good example of this in the lab portion, but I want everybody to get this concept down one more time. Your index, or your subscript, starts at 0 and increases by 1 for every element in the array. The number of elements you have in your array is just that, the number of lines on your piece of paper, if you want to think about it like that. Alright? Let me get back to my pointer. There we go. To fill an array, because we have to fill an array with data, we use a loop. Alright, and we went over loops in a previous lesson, and we're familiar with the do and the while loops and things like that, pre-test, post-test loop, conditional stuff, and everything like that. But we have a specific type of loop that is great for filling an array. It's beautiful for this task, and we're going to use it. That type of loop is called a for loop. Okay, F-O-R, loop. And the reason a for loop is so great is because you take care of the counter variable, the condition, and the increment or decrement of the counter variable all in one line of code. It's beautiful. Alright, and here is the general syntax of the for loop. For initialization, condition, increase or decrease. If you decrement, more than likely we're going to increase a variable, but you can decrement it as well. And then I have these pesky little curly brackets here, and then I have any number of statement or statements within this loop body. Alright? So again, this is the initialization, this is my counter variable, this is the condition my loop is going to run on, and this is going to be whether I increment or decrement and by how much. Beautiful. For loops, great. It takes all the guesswork out of loops. Alright, our program will fill a 10-item array with the equipment we have. It will then display the array to the screen using a for loop. Alright, and if I can say one more thing about for loops, a for loop is a definite loop. Definite loop, meaning I know how many times it's going to run. My do or my while loops are called indefinite loops. Not to be confused with an infinite loop, but is an indefinite loop, meaning usually I don't know how many times my do or my while loop is going to run. Alright? I'll see you guys in the lab portion for this lesson. If you have to watch this video 2 or 3 times to get the concept of an array down, don't worry about it. Any questions, just contact me on YouTube. Alright? Have fun.